Hey there, Variety here. Welcome to today's video in which we're going to be doing a class guide on the Rosen Knight class for Fantasy Tales, Sword and Magic. The Rosen Knight is primarily a tank and it can be played in two different distinct ways in my opinion. You'll have the Justice build and you'll have the Defense build, which we'll be going over in this video. Before we get into that though, I want to note that for anybody that hasn't really played a tank in an MMO, you have to adjust your tank based on the encounter. Like, if you're going into a mob fight with a boss with mobs that run away, you need to change your build so you can pull them in an aggro. You can't take one build fit all bosses. That may work as a DPS, but if you do that as a tank, you're going to be punished for it. For example, I've been in a dungeon where mobs will run right past the tank and kill the NPC because the tank simply refused to take shield throw to taunt the enemies at range, which not very clever. So just keep that in mind when you're going into encounters. Learn the encounter, adjust your build to the encounter. Okay, so let's have a look at the first build. Let's open up skills. So the first build is going to be the defend build. So for this build is going to be using 2 talent trees, which is up to level 51, and it's going to be using all defense. If you are feeling confident and you want to be more aggressive, feel free to trade out some of the tank abilities into more aggressive abilities. Flash of Light, it basically jumps up in the air, slams down, does AoE damage, which is great as a tank because most encounters have mobs that you need to pull in and need to do damage. This also reduces their accuracy by 10%, which of course is amazing on a tank. Holy Star will basically throw a ball of electricity out that will do damage, and you can control where it goes. So you can pick a direction and throw it out. This is extra damage, and if you're feeling particularly aggressive, you would take this. But if you're focusing on tank or if you don't know an encounter, I probably wouldn't take this. Shield Strike is a point and click ability which you can use every 6 seconds, which will do damage, but it'll also give you a shield every time you use it. And the shield lasts for 4 seconds. So basically you can have your shield up like 75% of the time, and you'll take less damage from the boss, obviously, because you keep refreshing your shield. That's why I put a lot of points into this, because I believe that, you know, having more shield and having a less stressed out healer is better than, you know, doing a tiny bit of damage compared to your DPS compatriots. Okay, so Shield Throw. So Shield Throw will throw the shield at the enemy and silence them. Now, if you have mobs that need to be silenced or a boss that needs to be silenced, this ability is obviously a must. However, if you do not have to silence the enemy, and if you do not have to taunt mobs at range, then you don't need to bring this. You can bring Shield Strike. If there are mobs that run away, or if you need to silence, you need to swap out Dragon Eye, Barrier, Shield Strike, or Flash of Light for Shield Throw. I would probably throw out Barrier depending on how much damage the team is taking. Shield Strike I could possibly take out for Shield Throw, but it's not something I feel very, comfortable with doing because I really like the shield that it gives you. So I mentioned the taunt, and it doesn't say anything here. In the abilities you'll see in a minute, it's actually included in there. So Barrier, the Rosen Knight gains 21% damage reduction. Again, massive. While Barrier is active, allies within 10 meters gain a shield. So basically, it's like an AoE shield for all of your allies. Really good. Something you want to use when you see damage coming out to your allies or damage to you, because you get 21% damage reduction. Very powerful, and as I mentioned, something that I would be very uncomfortable with giving up. Dragon Eye. So the Rosen Knight transforms into a dragon for 20 seconds. Every attack does 100% splash damage to all enemies within 2 meters of the original target. So it's 2 meters of the mob that you're targeting. The dragon form will also give the Rosen Knight 14% light mastery, which is basically strength, 7% defense, and 3.2% crit rate and invincibility skill. Basically what it does, it makes it so your auto attacks do AoE damage in front of you, because that's what you're attacking. And while you're in this form, you have the ability to proc it again, and the second proc will give you the invincibility skill. And you would use this like when you know a raid-wide attack's about to come out, or a one-shot KO, or something that's going to control affect you badly. So you're going to wait to use that. You're not just going to throw it out. Okay, so let's look at the talents real quick. So here is your main ability that you're using for this build. The Rosen Knight deals light damage to enemies within 5-meter radius, dealing 100% of his own damage, and adds a taunt effect. That's why this is the tank build. So basically, this will taunt all of your enemies around you. However, what it doesn't do is it doesn't taunt far away enemies. That is why if there are enemies that are running away, or you can't get them near you, you need to take the shield throw so you can pull them at length. It also protects a friendly ally and absorbs 40% of the damage to them for 8 seconds. So use this on someone that's close by, and it will reflect the damage they take to you, so they don't get trolled. If you move away, it will disappear, and if there are no allies, it'll shield yourself and reduce the damage taken by 30%. So that's good as well. So bounce. Shield throw applies taunt and bounces off multiple enemies. This is why I was talking about earlier, we want to take shield throw to taunt. If morphed, as in if you're in dragon form, it'll do 20% extra damage. When using the shield, the skill when morphed has 12% chance of refreshing shield throw. Basically, when you're dragon form, you have a chance of throwing the shield more often. Again, that's two abilities that are talking about the shield. You're going to need the shield to taunt. What ability you give up for the shield, shield throw, that's got to be on you. So, Great Shield, 40% of shield value for Shield Strike. Makes it so Shield Strike gives you more shield every couple of seconds. Force more damage when morphed. Rampant, 20% of the raid-wide barrier. Great. Graze, received healing effect and extra and damage reduction. And it'll also do 20% of your attack and a 1.5 second stun if somebody gets near the target that you protected. Determination removes crowd control from the protected target and grants them a 3% damage boost, while Invincible gain immunity to control and slow effects while in dragon form, gain an additional 6% damage reduction. Again, the person you protected, you're basically protecting them with removing their control effects and give them extra damage. Grants an 8% HP in Dragon Morph and heals 8% of max HP, extends the duration of invincibility by 3 seconds. This is great because your invincibility is longer and it heals you when you go into Dragon form, so less healing from the healer. Okay, so let's have a look at said abilities. So the first ability is going to be your jump ability. I use this so the enemies have 10% less accuracy, and it does a bit of damage AoE there. So the second ability is going to be your shield strike. As you can see, I have a bit of a shield, and you're going to see it drop off, and then basically I can use it again. So it's something you can keep using again and again to keep getting your shield up. Here is going to be your bigger shield ability that will protect your ally. So right now your ally is protected, the one that you chose. Next up is going to be Dragon Form. I'm now in Dragon Form. Now when I hit, it'll do AoE to enemies that are close by. Now I'm going to use the second ability, which is going to be Invincibility. Okay, now I'm invincible, and with this skill, I would be invincible for 6 seconds due to the talent. Okay, so the final ability is going to be your AoE taunt. As you saw, hit all the targets, and it's going to pull them in. So you're going to use that in conjunction with Shield Toss to taunt your enemies. But yeah, that's everything you need to know about the tank build at this point in the game. Let's go and have a look at the DPS build. Let's have a look at the more aggressive build. So let's go into skills. The skills we're going to be looking at here, we're going to be using Flash of Light, Holy Star. I personally will pick Barrier. I believe that you can change out Barrier with Shield Strike or Shield Throw. Shield Throw isn't as useful here because you don't have the ability to bounce them around like you did in the other build, but it still does silence if you need that. The Shield Strike will give you a small shield, which we looked at earlier. If you feel like you need that for your personal tankiness, go ahead and use it. more than that, it also using these talents, it decreases how much damage the boss does. So if you want to do that, that's actually, really worthwhile as well. I've personally decided right now for barrier, but I would definitely switch between barrier and shield strike depending on the boss. If the boss, or if it's a group of mobs doing kind of like AoE damage and your allies dying, I would take barrier to get a little bit of defense to protect them from dying. Because if your ally dies, the fight's over. But if you want to reduce the damage that the boss is doing, or if you want a bit of tankiness, take shield strike. Dragon Eye, of course, is transforming into the dragon, which is going to be a key part of this build as well. So let's have a look at the talent. Let's jump through. So Flicker. Before we talk about Flicker, actually, let's talk about Justice. So the Rosen Knight, it charges forward and does light damage to all the enemies. It leaves holy imprints. So holy imprints, think of them as marks or curses. And after 3 seconds, they'll blow up, which will do a lot of damage, right? So you're basically putting curses on the enemy to make them blow up with holy damage. That's what your main ability for this talent will do. So with Flicker, 20% flash of light damage. So your main ability, Flash of Light, will do 20% more damage. And it also gives you 4% light mastery, which is great, more damage. If morphed, Flash of Light inflicts holy imprint. Remember those curses I was just talking about? So now you can put the curses on them with Justice, and you can do it with your main AoE ability. So you jump down, do your damage, and then they explode 3 seconds later. If you're morphed, when you're in the dragon form. So when you're in the dragon form, you're going to be a lot more powerful than when you are not. When a Holy Star appears, it stuns all targets within 3 meter radius, and Holy Star 12% crit rate. This is great. This is the AoE ability, which I'll show you in a moment, and has a higher chance, does more damage, and it can stun the enemy. Great. Not as powerful as Flicker, because of the extra damage that comes from the holy marks, but I do think this is still a good talent. So, Bonebreaker. Plus 10% shield strike damage, reduces target damage by 2%. So this is what I was talking about earlier, where if you want to reduce the boss's damage, you could put some talents into here and make it so the enemy does less damage, and when you're morphed, you'll also stun the target. Avatar, 4% damage reduction and 6% damage with Dragon Morph status. So you'll be doing 60% extra damage for the first talent, which will stack on top of Flicker with the curse marks because you're using Flicker while you're in dragon form. Starburst. Holy Star also triggers a pulse explosion on targets with Holy Imprint, dealing 6% attack damage to enemies within 3 meters, plus 6% damage by Holy Star with Dragon Morph status. So basically what this is going to do is when you'll use your first ability, so your Flash of Light, to put an imprint on them, and then when they're imprinted, then you will drop your ball, and your ball will zap them while they have the imprint, which does extra damage. 10% charge damage. Detonate Holy Imprint also slows the target. Extra charge damage on the Holy Imprint is great because the whole build is revolved around doing that. So you get 10% on the charge. I don't actually think you get 10% on the Holy Imprint, which is disappointing, and it slows down the target. The charge does a fair bit of damage, dealing 360% of light damage. So yeah, an extra 10% of 360% is great, but I'm not exactly sure if I'd prioritize this over the earlier ability. Burden, Holy Star damage, plus 10%, minus 10% advancing speed. Great, your AoE ability will do more damage. Okay, so this is going to be your first ability here, which is going to put marks on them if you're in dragon form. The second ability, which you can control where it goes, this will stun them if you're in the dragon ability, and it'll activate the marks that are on them. Here, this is the ability that I have for shielding everybody. This is optional. Here we have the charge. That now has an effect on it. It's going to explode. There we go. So now I'm going to go into dragon form, and then I'm going to do it again. So dragon form. So it's just pretty simple. But as you can see, the cooldowns are kind of long, and I'm not really using the R key. I'm personally keeping that because I think that, you know, saving your teammates is just definitely the thing that you should be doing. Yeah, that's kind of the more aggressive way to play it. Of course, you can play it a bit more aggressively if you swap out the shield ability, but I just think it is very useful. Anyway, I hope that has showed you everything that you need to know when deciding if you want to play the Rosen Knight, and I hope that today's guide proves useful to you. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching.